So for the second case of this week, we are going back to Georgia. We do have two murders that happened with our killer, and they happened in two different cities. And I mention this now because normally I try to tag like the city that it happened in, but because it happened in like multiple different cities, I'm just going to tag Georgia because it's the state that it happened in. So just a heads up on that. Apparently this case was pretty big news when our killer eventually went to trial. So if anybody lives in the state of Georgia, knew our killer, either of our victims, always let me know down below. And so with that being said, sources down below as always. And so I'm going to quit my rambling and let's go and get started. So Julia Lynn Turner was born on July 13th, 1968. Her biological parents would get divorced, but apparently she would go between the time they divorced at 2 to the time she's 5, she gets adopted. And then her adopted mother basically drops the name Julia from her name, so she goes by Lynn Turner, even though every article you'll see, pretty much every article you will see on her, she's legally Julia Lynn Turner. But from the age of like 5 to who knows how long, she was going by Lynn. So then her adoptive mother would eventually get remarried. Doesn't say how old Julia is, but eventually she would get remarried, so I guess she has like an adoptive stepfather now. At 17, apparently the adoptive mother would take her to the hospital and basically accuse her of doing drugs. And apparently the only drugs that Julia were doing at the time was occasionally doing weed, but apparently she was not addicted. So she graduates high school in 1986. She then goes to college and gets an associate's degree. She then goes on to work as an administrative assistant and then a secretary. And then in 1991, she gets upgraded to a 911 dispatch caller. So I guess she was getting the more serious crimes because originally when she got the job, she was only getting like the petty stuff. So she would eventually marry her first husband, Glenn Turner, who was a police officer, and he was born September 25th, 1963, and he was the middle child of 5, so like the third of 5 children. And then at 2 years old, for some reason, he was living with his grandparents, but he would eventually move out, as most adults do. At 16 years old, he would be sent to boarding school, but he had his sister and his friend Jerry there. So then after apparently graduating, he apparently tried landscaping, construction, and UPS as like careers. And then at 21, he decided he wanted to be a police officer. So then, of course, you got to go to like academy and train and then graduate in order to become all that. So then while he's doing all that, he's staying with his sister and then graduates in 1985. So then in 1986, before he even meets Julia, Glenn has another girlfriend, and apparently he's driving around with her at night when Glenn apparently get attacked by some strangers who had just randomly had some baseball bats with them. And apparently it was so severe. And then apparently he was dragged for like several blocks by a van. And then, of course, he would eventually get taken to the hospital. He wound up having to do physical therapy. He winds up getting put into like a coma, and then has to do, when he gets out of the coma, has to do physical therapy for like 6 to 8 months. Sources vary on how long he did the physical therapy. However, of course, he does survive. So then, of course, he goes to live with his sister, and then apparently he was assigned to the motorcycle unit in like 1987, because I guess, again, he had already graduated, so we're talking about the motorcycle unit of the police force. And so then by 1992, apparently when he meets Julia, him and his girlfriend Stacy had already. So then they get married August 21st, 1993. Glenn had a life insurance policy. I assume since he wasn't married, it was like made out to his mom in the event that he passes because he is a police officer and I could get killed on duty because police officers do sadly get killed on duty like all the time. So now that we're married, have it transferred to my name since I'm your wife. And then apparently she somehow convinced him to add on another $100K. And then she also convinced him to have multiple jobs. So not only doing police work, he's also doing other jobs. And then apparently the money he was making from the other jobs, she would just spend it like there's no tomorrow. And then, of course, I guess Julia was done with Glenn's ass. So then she gave him antifreeze one night. And apparently he was hallucinating, thought that there was intruders in the house. And apparently he had called his mom. And that was like the last call is known that Glenn made. And then it said he died hours later on March 3rd, 1995. So then his death is ruled like natural causes, even though he's like 31. He's 31. So death rule natural causes, and Julia collects about $200,000 in life insurance. So then after killing Glenn, she then goes to the local pet shelter and tries to see like what chemicals do y'all use to euthanize animals. Essentially, like what chemicals y'all use to put them down. And obviously that's not going to be just up and available for like anybody and everybody. And then, of course, I imagine she had to give like a fake reasoning as to like why she's asking this. And so she's like, oh, well, my neighborhood has a stray cat problem and I'm trying to fix it. So then Julia, of course, would meet who would become her second husband, Randy Thompson. He was born June 12th, 1968. He had actually been married before he met Julia, but they were, of course, divorced by the time he had met her. They had 2 kids, a daughter named Amber, apparently born 1996, and a son named Blake. And apparently he had worked as like a sheriff for a while, so also a little police officer, but would eventually work for the fire department at the time that he met Julia. So then in July of 1997, Julia basically accuses Randy of being physically abusive to her. He gets 10 months probation. He apparently had attempted suicide twice after this. And then, of course, in 1999, they would eventually separate. So, on January 19th, 2001, Julia poisons Randy with some antifreeze. One of his friends would actually find him apparently on the kitchen floor. Know where Julia was at, we don't know. But apparently, the friend finds him on the floor. He is obviously rushed to the hospital, and it's seen that he gets better, but he is dead within 3 days. So he dies like on the 22nd. So then, of course, a test is done to see like, because again, the guy's like in his 30s. Like, how did he die so young? And so a test is done. Like, pretty much nothing is found. Calcium oxalate crystals apparently are found in the bloodstream. And apparently those are only found if you're taking prescription drugs or if you've been poisoned. So then they do an ethylene glycol, which is pretty much the fancy term. Pretty much like, I guess, the bigger word term for antifreeze, which was what she was poisoned with. And somehow that came back negative. So then Randy's cause of death was eventually ruled to be heart disease because apparently he did have heart problems. So apparently the life insurance company that Randy had his life insurance through, apparently that policy had stopped being paid a couple months prior to his death. So Julia was only able to get like $35,000 from Randy's death. So apparently 6 weeks after Randy dies, his mom gets a letter from Glenn's mom because apparently she finds out that Julia has since been remarried because apparently she cut off all contact with Glenn's family after she starts dating Randy. And so she finds Randy's mom, apparently her name's Kathy. She reaches out and says, hey, my son died in a similar way to your son, around the same age. And the one thing they have in common, other than that, of course, is that they both were in a relationship with Julia. So basically trying to suggest that the cases are connected and that Julia may be involved. So then the same person who who requested the antifreeze test found out about Glenn's results. So then, of course, he looked at them and found out that the same crystals were found in apparently both men's bodies. So then they go and look at Glenn's autopsy to recalculate. So then Glenn's body is, of course, exhumed, and there's a lethal amount of antifreeze found in his body. So then Julia is arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. Custody of the kids that she apparently had would, of course, go to her mom, because obviously she can't raise them, so she's now going to jail. She would apparently get sentenced to life in prison. She would go to Georgia's Supreme Court to basically appeal her case, I guess like to get off or get a lighter sentence. That, of course, would get denied. And then on August 30th, 2010, Julia is found dead in her cell from what is believed to be a suicide. They don't know the official cause of death, but it's believed that she poisoned herself, and legally her cause of death right now is listed as suicide. So I guess take that as what you will. That is the case of what is known of Julia Lynn Turner. If anybody knew anybody involved in the case, whether it be the victims, killers, victim family, whether you worked with them, friends with them, dated them, whatever, definitely always let me know what you think down below. Sources down below as always. I cover fatal females 3 times every week. Subscribe for more fatal females. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Dead, will you regret everything that you did, that you said? I don't think you understand what you're doing, and my heart's black and blue from the bruising. I feel like when I'm with you I'm losing. I feel like you think that this amusing, sitting there gaslighting and confusing. Was it me? Is it me? Am I deluded? I'm the one who's always sorry, the conclusion, even though I offer all of the solutions. I wish you loved me like I love you, it's stupid. When I'm alone with you I never feel lucid. I wish I wasn't struck by Cupid. I wish when I first saw you I knew this. When I'm with you I feel so useless. I feel diluted, my heart's been wounded. Silhouettes of you are like a taunt. Never really know just what you want. With you I don't ever feel calm. I can feel the sweat inside my palms. Play with me like cats and a string. You don't understand the pain it brings. You don't ever wanna give me wings. You don't ever wanna set me free.
But if I lay down and I